All right, I think with that, we're gonna call to order the regular meeting of the Truckee Donner Public Utility District. It is 6 o'clock, Wednesday, June 3rd. Shauna, could we have roll call, please?
Director Ellis.
Here.
Director Loliotis.
Here.
Vice President Finn.
Here.
President Bender.
I'm here.
The minutes will note where is absent.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, we're going to defer the pledge. Michael Hawley, any changes to the agenda tonight?
There are no changes.
Got it. Good to hear. Okay, so we're going to now open it up for public input. I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A there. Shauna, do you have any emails or other forms of communication to you?
No, sir, no public comment tonight.
Got it. Thank you. So we'll close public comment and dive into director update. Tony, do you have any updates for us tonight?
Yes, I want to thank all staff board and staff members who attended Friday's Facebook Live event. It was well done and very impressive. I apologize I couldn't be there, but I want to thank the community as well for participating, and hopefully we can have more events like that in the future.
Great, thanks, Tony. Bob, you're unmuted, so I'm going to call on you.
Okay, yeah, I agree with Tony. I thought the Facebook Live presentation was very well planned, and I hope it came across well. And just want to welcome our new general manager, Rem, and hopefully the vote goes okay tonight. So anyway, and I'm looking forward to not having to do our meetings on Zoom. So hopefully that will end soon, I hope. That's it.
Great. Thanks, Bob. Krista?
Well, I'm going to echo both of those sentiments. That was a great event, and I'm happy that it went off well, and appreciate all the effort that went into that. And at the same time, I also want to acknowledge that it's been kind of a heavy week for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. And when that happens, I think it can be really helpful just to sort of review our core values. So again, we're in a moment of transition, and we're welcoming in a new GM, and we're starting to say a deeply grateful farewell to Michael. And I just want to make sure that we're keeping our hearts on our organizational values of accountability, integrity, timeliness, safety, and work-life balance, as was that of our personal values also that you hold, you know, compassion, respect, generosity, and courage. So just tonight, I'm redirecting myself as a board member here to try to more successfully carry these values forward in service to our community, to our PUD staff, and to my fellow board members. So stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you for all you do.
Great. Well said, everyone. So thanks very much. Yeah, heavy week and tough times with that. And then to top it off, we've got 6 more cases in Nevada County, I just saw, so for coronavirus. So we're having another hit there. The Facebook Live event, well executed, well planned. And I was wondering if I was going to have a big, just emotional relief. And in fact, I did. It was like, wow, it's just a huge weight off of all of our shoulders, and just want to say thank you to everyone. This was huge. And here we are with our formal public hearing tonight. So very exciting, a lot of hard work, an enormous effort, and we've crossed the finish line. So thank you. All right, I think that does it for director update. And here we are with our item number 7, public hearing. We have a public hearing for receiving comments from members of the public regarding the adoption of the general manager's chief executive officer's employment agreement. And is there a presentation on this? It's hard. We don't see anyone walking up to the podium.
Yes, I believe we do have a presentation this evening.
Oh, excellent.
President Bender, members of the board, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Very good. So I will provide a presentation tonight on item number 7, the public hearing. We're going to conduct a public hearing and then consider adopting ordinance 2020-01. In preparation of Michael Hawley's retirement, the district has consulted with the public, staff, and consultant Pam Hurt Associates to develop both hard and cultural skill sets to aid in the hiring of a new general manager. An ad hoc succession committee, planning committee was assembled, including directors Laliotis and Finn, Joe Horvath, Electric Utility Director, and Brian Wright, Water Utility Director. The board approved and recommended hard and soft skill sets, competencies on October 9 of 2019. On November 2nd, 2019, the board approved the professional services of Peckham and McKinney in the executive search and recruiting process. Peckham and McKinney completed an initial screening and interview process and presented a short list of 9 candidates to the board. Thereafter, the board identified the top 3 candidates to interview. On April 27 and 28, the general manager interviews commenced in a unanimous decision by the board. It has chosen, negotiated with, and announced its decision to hire Rem Scherzinger as the district's new general manager, chief executive officer. Under California Public Utilities Code section 16112, the general manager of the district shall receive compensation as is provided for by the board by ordinance. And therefore, the employment agreement, which establishes the general manager's compensation, must be approved by an ordinance. The district completed the legal posting timeline established by the board to schedule the public hearing. Tonight's public hearing entails this public hearing and adopting ordinance 20-21, approving the general manager's / CEO employment agreement. The costs associated with the general manager's salary are included in the board approved fiscal year 20 budget. And the recommendations for tonight are first, to conduct a public hearing regarding ordinance 20-01, and second, to adopt ordinance 2021 approving the employment agreement with Rem Scherzinger as a general manager, CEO, and authorize the board president to sign the agreement. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Steve, thank you very much. So I believe at this time I'd like to open up the public hearing. And so Shauna, do we have any public comment on this item? And I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A on Zoom.
That is correct, Mr. President Bender. There's no attendees and there's been no email communication on this item.
Wow. So I'll talk real slowly.
And I'll check my email again.
And I think with that, we'll close the public hearing on this item, and then we'll open it up for director comments and questions. So Krista, do you have anything?
No. I feel like we've been pretty thorough on this one. So I'm good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Bob?
No, I'm on board 100%.
Excellent. Good to hear. Thanks, Bob. Tony?
Nothing here. I think if there was something more, I'd probably have to resign. No, as Krista said, we couldn't have had a more thorough process, and I couldn't have been happier with the results. And thank you, Steve, for bringing it home today. So thanks for all the hard work, everybody.
Thanks, Tony. Pam, thanks for taking us through the process. This was huge learning experience for everyone, and definitely me. So I just want to thank you for guiding us through this, and the decision was excellent, and we're all excited. Huge team effort. So really happy to be here.
Thank you.
All right, Shauna, I think we, oh, wait, we need a motion for an ordinance. I was skipping the roll call, so we need a motion. Is there a motion?
I will move that we adopt ordinance 2020-01, approving the employment agreement with Remla Scherzinger as the general manager, chief executive officer, and authorize the board president to sign the agreement.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. A motion by Director Finn and a second by Director Laliotis. Shauna, could we have roll call, please?
Thank you. Director Ellis?
Yes.
Director Laliotis?
Yes.
Vice President Finn?
Yes.
President Bender?
Yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to Rem.
Yeah, very excited. You can breathe now, Michael.
Excellent.
All right. That is really good. So let me just adjust my agenda to get to the next item. Okay, awesome. All right, so we have two action items tonight. Action item number 8, consideration to approve the Coldstream Development Agreement with Tykert Construction is our first one. Who's up on that one?
That would be me, President Bender. So
All right.
good evening, President Bender, member of the board. I'm going to share my screen here for the presentation. So as President Bender indicated, this is action item number 8 regarding the Coldstream Development Agreement. Technical difficulty here. Okay, when a developer proposes to construct a new project within our service area, a development agreement is necessary if there are facilities to be constructed by the developer intended to be conveyed or passed on to the district for ownership, operation, and maintenance. And per district code, if that development agreement includes infrastructure or construction improvements that exceed $400,000 in value, board approval is required. Just to outline what typically a development agreement involves, it is a contract between the developer and the district. It outlines the responsibilities of each party with respect to the project. District policy and practice has been to require separate development agreements for the electric utility and water utility. The items typically addressed in this agreement include costs and fees associated with the project, the dedication of easements where necessary, dedication of facilities constructed by the developer once the project is completed, items such as insurance, indemnification, and then ultimately project acceptance and any associated warranties with workmanship or the product. A brief outline of the development agreement process. Initially, there are discussions between a potential developer and the district to discuss the feasibility of the project, how that project fits into the larger distribution systems of both water and power. There's a development agreement application submitted by the developer. Staff and the district review and provide required revisions of project plans. And then there's a preparation or negotiation of the development agreement. Ultimately, there's a signing of the agreement and payment of the costs and fees, as we are doing this evening with this action item, recommending to the board approval as required per district code. And then once that's completed, we can proceed, or the developer can proceed with construction. And then the final step in this process would be the district to accept the project as complete and conduct an administrative closeout. This evening we are discussing the Coldstream development. This is Planned Community 1 or PC1, located at the entrance to Coldstream Canyon. It's adjacent to the Donner Memorial State Park. Most of you would know it as the area behind the Taco Bell at the I-80 exit there. The land was formerly utilized by A. Teichert & Son for aggregate materials. There's some aggregate excavations out there for the early construction projects in the Truckee area. The development includes the construction of up to 300 residential units and approximately 30,000 square feet of mixed-use commercial space. This is both a residential and commercial development. Staff and Teichert Construction or Coldstream developers have been working over the past several months on the development agreement, the details within the development agreement, and a reimbursement agreement attached with that for phase 3. This is a single phase within the larger development or the planned community. There will be a requirement for additional separate development agreements for future phases. Here's a quick overview of the exhibit. In the far left-hand side, or what would be the west side of the development, is phase 3. That's the on-site map of what this particular development agreement will include. For phase 3, the work includes some on-site improvements or on-site new construction, including design, engineering, construction, and inspection of water utility infrastructure within the development. These include items such as water distribution pipeline to serve the development, fire hydrants, and residential and commercial service connections. There is an off-site component. This includes the design, engineering, construction, and inspection of a new potable water storage tank at the district's Red Mountain facility. This tank is required to provide capacity for potable water use and fire flow upon full build out of the development. So once all of the phases are completed, this additional capacity will be needed to serve the development. For this evening's action, there is no net fiscal impact with this item. The developer will be reimbursed for the actual construction costs for the potable water storage tank through the collection of water facility fees by the district from parcels within this development. The total dollar value of the construction associated with this development agreement is expected to exceed $400,000. That is the reason why we're bringing it before the board this evening for approval. One other additional note is if the off-site work associated with the construction of the water storage tank exceeds $500,000, staff will bring recommendations to the board at a later date. The development agreement for the off-site construction of the tank does have a cap of $500,000. Should it reach that, or it's expected to reach that, staff will come back with further recommendations to the board. recommendation before you this evening is to authorize the general manager to execute the development agreement between Coldstream Properties LLC and the district for the Coldstream Development Phase 3. And I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you, Brian. I'd like to open up this action item to the public for public comment. And no Q&A. Shauna, is there any public comment that you're finding? I'm not seeing any additional attendees, so I think we're good.
My apologies. No, sir, there's no public comment.
Got it. All right. Thanks, Shauna. Okay, Krista, do you have any comments or concerns?
I just have a few questions. You're asking for approval because it's going to be over 400,000. I'm curious what the estimated value of the entire facilities that are going to be built associated with this development.
The original engineer's estimate for the facility fees was approximately $400,000. There has been some additional geotechnical work that's required. I'm sorry, Mr. Gross.
If I understand the question correctly, I think Director Svin is asking for the value of all the improvements that would be dedicated to the district, not just the tank facility.
My apologies. I don't have that total number for you. It includes the actual infrastructure within the development, the pipeline component and the hydrants. I can get that for the board if you wish. I don't have the total value for it at this moment.
Yeah, and it was kind of a curiosity question. Oops. Did I have another question? So they pay for this up front. That's how it usually works, and we pay it off over time with our ratepayers. So there's a reimbursement agreement that gives that some sort of structure. That's obviously signed now ahead of time. What happens if things don't play out as expected? If it doesn't fill up in a timely fashion, for example, if we don't have residents or commercial customers, what does that, is that addressed in the contract? I'm assuming it is. Is that what that, are there safeties for us? Even more than clearly this is designed to shelter, the PUD. We don't have exposure because the developer is taking that on. But I just was curious what those reimbursement contracts look like.
So this particular reimbursement agreement requires that the developer fully fund the construction of the water storage tank, and that the reimbursement for those costs, the actual cost, are tied to the district's collection of facility fees as each of the homes or mixed-use commercial space are constructed, the permits are completed, and we serve water to that facility. We collect facility fees, and that is passed back along to the developer to reimburse the cost of that construction. So the reimbursement to the developer is tied to the expansion of the development.
Okay, so they just continue to shoulder that debt indefinitely if the development does not perform as hoped.
Yes, the nature of the reimbursement agreement is that the reimbursement is tied to the developer of record at that time, the owner of the development.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Krista. Tony, any thoughts?
Yeah, a couple questions. Is there a development agreement? I guess we're being asked to approve an agreement, and I haven't seen it. So I'm just curious what the status of the agreement is.
There is a final development agreement that has been generated. Both parties are reviewing for final edits and signatures. Typically, staff hasn't brought the actual development agreement to the presentation. This is recommending authorization for the general manager to execute it. Essentially, this is authorizing the general manager to execute the final agreement.
I understand. I guess if the board's being asked to authorize an agreement, I would assume that we would see it in some shape or form. But what also, is there any other benefiting development from any of the improvements that are being built?
If I understand the correction, my apologies, that the question is associated with the water storage tank construction. So I'll break it into two steps. The actual improvements constructed within the development, the on-site improvements, are directly tied to the benefit of the facilities constructed inside that development. The water storage tank is an off-site in order to provide total water storage capacity for both that zone and the impact it has on reducing water storage in the Donner Lake area of Truckee. So basically, this development has an impact to the net water storage capacity on that end of the distribution system. And so it is directly tied to providing fire flow protection to this development upon full build out.
Okay, so if another subdivision goes in, then benefits from the installation of this tank, does the agreement have a reimbursement clause for not just reimbursement from facility fees, but reimbursement from, let's say, additional development?
With respect to this development agreement, there is no other external component to it or future development beyond this PC1.
Okay. All right, I don't have any more questions.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Bob?
Bob, you're muted.
Brian, what is the expected lifespan of the tank and the pipes going to the tank?
The engineering estimates or typical industry estimates of lifespan for ductile iron and PVC distribution piping is in excess of 70 years. Typical tank construction, modern tank construction under modern AWWA standards are similar to that, but there are milestones for maintenance and there's a lifespan for coatings, there's a lifespan for the exterior components, there's a lifespan for the structure. So it's kind of a complex question, but it's in excess of 70 years.
Okay. I guess we won't be around then. All right. That's all I got. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Bob. Any other concerns, or is there a motion? I think we're looking good here on this one, on the development agreement, and
I'll make a motion to authorize the general manager to execute the development agreement between Coldstream Properties LLC and the district for the Coldstream Development Phase 3.
thank you, Bob.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Krista. Shauna, could we have roll call on this action item, please?
Thank you. Director Ellis,
Yes.
Director Laliotis,
Yes.
Vice President Finn,
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, we are on to action item 9, consideration of the audited financial report for fiscal year 2019. Mike.
Thank you. Good evening, President Bender and members of the board. I'll get my presentation up here. Okay, is the presentation showing? Great. This is action item number 9, consideration of the audited financial reports for fiscal year 2019. The district is required to have its financial records audited each year by the board, audited each year for the board, and the board is responsible for hiring the auditors, and the auditors present their findings to the board. That's what they're doing this evening. There's 2 financial reports that include the audit report. There's consolidated financial statements, which are the primary government as well as the community facility district financial information. And then we also do a separate set of financials for the primary government only, which is the electric and water utility operations. The auditors give an opinion as to whether financial statements fairly present the district's financial position in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, also known as GAAP. Moss Adams conducted the fiscal year 19 audit, and it's now complete, and they're ready to present that. We have on the Zoom call, we have Keith Simovic and Lucy Zhu from Moss Adams, who will present the audit tonight. And I'll turn it over to Keith.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Mike. Hopefully all of you can hear me just fine. And thanks for having us here, President Bender and members of the board. Excited to be here, at least virtually. Always love to be there in person, and hopefully it'll be a different situation next year. Definitely been an interesting year, and you know, just first off, just a thanks to the staff and everyone involved in this, because there was a lot of flexibility that needed to occur this year, just in a remote environment. You know, our firm has been completely in a remote environment. No one's been on site at clients since middle of March, and so and I know the district has been in that same kind of position as well. So we've pretty much done our final field work completely remotely, and it went very, very well. And we've got some good news that we want to go over with you tonight. But just real quick, stepping back, again, my name is Keith Simovic. I'm the senior manager, engagement reviewer, responsible for overseeing the engagement and signing the final audit reports. Just a quick refresher on Moss Adams for those of you that may be newer to the board or working with us. We are always kind of bounce around between the 10th to 13th largest accounting firm in the U.S. I think last I checked in 2019 we were 11th, but we are the largest firm located on the West Coast, located out of Seattle, Washington. We have over 300 partners, over 3,400 professionals that work for us in over 25 locations. But the thing that I'd say is unique about our firm, and what's really kind of drawn me in and kept me here over the years, is really the industry focus and specialty. So our folks get a broad base of experience early on, but even from an early stage, as you voice the areas that you want to work on and that you have passion for, you get to focus in those areas and narrow your focus over time. So at the position I'm at now, I focus probably 95% of my time working with entities in the power and utility space. And I'd say even with those, within that 95%, overwhelming majority is within public utility districts as well. And I don't really spend a lot of time outside of that. And so with me today also, as Mike said, is Lucy Zhu. She was our senior auditor on the engagement this year, and she'll be helping me present tonight as well. So for our agenda, we kind of set this up, you know, there's certain items that our professional standards require that we have to present to the board, but we kind of set this up in a different fashion to really be in more of a question and answer format that we kind of like. And it's really kind of putting ourselves in your shoes and saying, you know, if we were in your spot, what would we want to know about the audit? and how it functioned. And so we're going to kind of go through each of these questions, and we'll move forward to the first question, which is really just, you know, at the end of the day, you see a deliverable in front of you, which is the audited financial statements. And within those statements, you see our audit report. So we're really responsible for just about 2 to 3 pages within that, you know, 70-page document or whatever it is these days. And but how do we get to that point where we can issue that piece of paper, right? So there's a lot of work that goes into that, and we're really spending time on site, or at least remotely, and breaking up our fieldwork into 2 separate phases. The first of which is our what we call our interim fieldwork, and that's where we're focused on processes, procedures, and really internal controls. And the reason that we look at that first, independently of looking at the final balances and really kind of doing some of our substantive test procedures, is so that we can incorporate that into our risk assessment process, which is really important. Even if, you know, the fact that we've been the auditor, you know, for a few years now, and we understand what the internal controls and the processes and procedures and policies in place are, we need to look at that independently each year and pull transactions to test that independently to see if those internal controls are still functioning as intended. We can't just rely on what we've done in the past. We have to test those each year and make sure those are still operating routinely and consistently as they have in the past, and make sure there's still strong internal controls, and that there's internal controls in place when there's new types of transactions that come up that maybe the district hasn't experienced before. So that's a big piece of what we're doing. We incorporate that into our risk assessment process to say, you know, if we're finding a lack of internal controls, or maybe internal controls aren't functioning the way that they used to, or not as consistently, things are getting missed, those types of things, we incorporate that into the risk assessment process to say, when we come back and look at final numbers during our final field work, we're going to have to do some additional testing, pull larger samples, do additional procedures to get to a point where we can say we feel that this balance is reasonable and stated accurately in your financial statements. So that's a big part of what we do. Again, the final field work, the second piece, when we come back out and we've done all our risk assessment and we have our audit plan set, that's where we're spending the bulk of our time. Mike, if you can just go back one slide real quick. That's where we're spending the bulk of our time, and that's in, you know, some of the inspection of source documents, where we're looking at invoices, we're looking at contracts and agreements, and seeing if what is recorded in your financial statements on a transactional basis is consistent with those contracts, agreements, and invoices. Were the items recorded at the correct amount in the correct period? Classified correctly, if you think of something being classified as capital versus operating expense. Those are the types of things that we're looking for, and seeing if there's substantive evidence to support what the district has recorded. We're also reaching out to third parties, whether that be financial institutions, debt holders, and also with attorneys as well, just to see if there's anything out there where there's a potential for a contingent liability, contingent loss to the district that would need to be either accrued for or disclosed in your financial statements in accordance with the accounting rules in place. And then also analytical procedures are a big piece of what we do too. Specifically when we're thinking about your income statement, the revenue and expense activity, we can get a good feel for where we feel those items should end up in the year that we're auditing. If we read through the minutes and we know what's going on, we've had conversations with management, we know about rate changes. In a lot of cases, we can come up with a pretty precise expectation for where those things should end up. And it's really taking a look at a 30,000-foot view and saying, are we seeing anything that's kind of outside of what we would expect that would cause us to dig in more? You know, you can do all the substantive, you know, testing and sampling where you're kind of looking for a needle in a haystack to some degree. You know, taking that step back and saying, does this really make sense, is an important part of what we're doing as well. And so through all those procedures, you know, we can get to a point where we've tested enough through our professional standards and everything that we can give an opinion on the financial statements. Okay, go ahead and move forward to the next slide, Mike. We're also doing a technical review of those financial statements. That document in front of you, again, we're responsible for a few pages in there for our audit report, but those financial statements are prepared by your staff. And it's, you know, I'll say that's not the case for all of our clients. There's a good number of our clients that were drafting the financial statements and assisting in that process for them. But you have the staff that have the knowledge and experience to be able to put that document together, which is great. So we can come in and really just do a technical review to see, does it include all the bells and whistles that are required by the governmental accounting standards? Do all the numbers reconcile and tie back to all the, you know, your trial balance and the general ledger that we were provided when we started the audit, making sure that what's reported in that document is consistent with what we actually audited and tested. and that any supplementary schedules in there, you'll see a supplementary schedule in the back that consolidates your various, electric operations, water, as well as the community facilities districts as well, making sure that's all presented accurately. And then finally, we're required from our standards to report out to this governing body. And we've also issued a written communication that's called our communication to those charged with governance, and we'll go through some of the highlights from that tonight. So that's what's involved in the audit, just to give you a little more insight. The next question is, if we were in your seat, we want to know, okay, so that's what's involved in an audit. What's the final results, and are those financial statements that you're giving a report on, are they deemed materially accurate? And so our procedures, we've talked about the substantive test procedures, our technical review, but this really all starts back with that risk assessment. I talked about internal controls, but another piece of that is just really sitting down and brainstorming, where does the risk lie? New transactions, new accounting standards can change that risk profile. Change in staffing definitely can change that risk profile, changes in internal controls. I can tell you for next year that a significant focus will be on the change in internal controls. If there is a change or impact from COVID-19, working remotely, if those controls are still operating as intended, even in a remote electronic environment. So that's something that is intended to focus on the risk, spend the time where the risk is, and make sure that we're focused in the right areas and the audit isn't static. We're not focusing on risks that really aren't significant risks anymore. We're focused on the areas where the highest risk lies, and we're adjusting our audit procedures to account for that. So through all those procedures, what we've given, if you read through our audit report, is what's known as an unmodified, but better terminology there is a clean audit opinion, meaning we believe the financial statements through the testing we've done and evidence we've gathered are free of material misstatement, whether due to error or fraud, and that they're in line with the governmental accounting standards. So that's exactly what you're looking for. Any third party that you provide these statements to, that's exactly what they want to see. Has a big impact on a number of different things, primarily with rating agencies and things like that. A clean audit opinion definitely is something that they're looking for. And then finally, we issue our separate communication to those charged with governance, which again, I'll mention a few highlights from there. That I'm going to pass the mic over to Lucy, and she can go through some of those as well and discuss what you'll see in that letter. So with that, I will turn it over to Lucy for the next few slides.
Hi. So moving on, we'll start with audit adjustments. So for the 2019 audit, we had a very clean audit, like Keith mentioned, and there were no audit adjustments that were booked or audit adjustments that the district passed on, and through all the various sections that we tested. Next slide, Mike.
And I'll just chime in real quick right there. An audit adjustment, that would be something where if we were, as we're doing our testing, as we receive all the information from management, if we're noting any material errors in the testing that we're doing, that would be something that would be showing up on this slide. So if we're finding material errors, that's going to be showing up here, bridging the gap between the information we originally received from management and then what you're seeing that would reflect any audit adjustments in those audited financial statements. Typically, that would also mean there's some underlying, missing controls or something like that. If there's an error that's noted, we're going to probably have some recommendation related to that as well. But that's what would drive those.
Okay, and so we perform a variety of procedures to help us identify errors and to identify fraud. And so as Keith mentioned, one of our key areas is looking at control testing. We perform during our interim procedures. We look at various significant sections such as plant, property, and equipment, as well as unbilled revenue. And we do detail testing. We speak with management. We also pull a selection of transactions for testing. We also perform brainstorming sections across the team, both with our engagement reviewer, our concurring reviewer, as well as with the audit team. And from that brainstorming discussion, we come up with any additional procedures we would like to perform during the year, as well as a surprise procedure. And this surprise procedure will change over time. And so this year, with the departure of Regina, we took a look at internal access to various systems. And we worked with the IT department to test and ensure that Regina's access was timely terminated upon her her unemployment. And then the last step we perform to help us identify fraud is to interview various individuals throughout the district. We focus on both individuals who are involved in day-to-day work related to the preparation of the financial statements, as well as members outside of the accounting team. And this year we interviewed Ian, the Chief Information Officer. We interviewed Tricia and Craig from the accounting team, as well as President Bender, the board president. And from all those discussions, no additional items were identified. And as the slide notes, our control testing was proved to be effective, and there were no instances of fraud identified throughout our audit. And overall, we concluded that management has strong controls in place that are appropriate and help the district maintain and provide us maintain and create materially accurate financial statements.
And one more thing I was going to note there too is just that, you know, the purpose of the audit is not a forensic audit, although, you know, we're giving an opinion that says we believe the financial statements are free of material misstatement, whether due to error or fraud. So you know, we need to be aware of it. We need to design some procedures surrounding that. But that's not to say that we're looking in areas that are smaller than materiality, right? We are, because typically when you hear about something like fraud, it's something that starts small and builds over time. It's never something where, you know, a couple $1 million walks out the door without any previous smaller kind of instances of fraud happening. It's something that starts small, someone figures out they can do something, there's not controls there, and it builds. So this is something where we're, through our brainstorming and things that we're hearing about, or we're seeing at other clients, or things we're seeing in the news that are fraud trends and things like that. Those are the types of things that we're talking about, and coming to the district and doing as one of those surprise or unpredictable procedures that's different every year to, again, keep the audit fresh, to make sure we're addressing those risks and looking at those more immaterial balances in areas that might not have the same robustness in terms of the controls in place, to see if there's small, unusual transactions running through there, or if there's any recommendations related to controls that we can provide.
And then, so as a result of our control testing, the items that I'm going to discuss below are included in the letter to those charged with governance. And any findings that we have, there were no significant or material weakness findings. They were all other matters, or what we like to call additional recommendations. And they are disclosed in that letter, along with management's plan in place for how they're going to address it going forward. So the first one was the timeliness of work order closure processes. We noted that compared to the prior year, the district is doing a great job of closing work orders on time upon the completion of work. And then, however, we did find a couple work orders that were not closed after the work was completed. And that was more due to a timing between when it's closed per gap versus closed when all the additional documents, like all the appropriate agreements are signed from the service team. And so as a method of improvement, we've recommended to the accounting team that for work orders where all the work has been completed, but maybe the full document package is not available yet, those can be reclassified. And we recommended using a different account, FERC account 106, construction completed but not yet classified. And management has noted our response, and they will incorporate that reclass going forward. And then the second was we performed a review of existing vendors that the district uses, and we noted that for new vendors, the district has a great control system in place to make sure they're properly reviewed and properly approved. However, we did know for existing vendors, if there needed to be a payment source change or an address change, those changes are not reviewed by a secondary source. And so management has noted our response, and they agree with our recommendation to implement a vendor master file change that will review any changes made to existing vendors going forward. And then we also have an update on two recommendations we made in the prior year. One is the documentation of changes made by super users, and as well as the documentation of just a periodic review of user access to the various systems. As you can see, both have been resolved. Management during 2019 implemented additional testing, as well as they are now performing internal audits and reviewing user access for various employees I believe it's right now it's on a 6-month. It was on an annual basis for 2019, and going forward, they're going to move it to a 6-month process. And then for any super users, they have also reviewed that, determined if those users truly need access to all the systems, and then per my discussion with Ian, as well as review of the documentation, they have reduced the number of super users, and going forward, those super users will be reviewed on a continuous basis to determine if their access needs to be revised.
And just real quick on these, the categories that we have in there listed as other matters, I mean, that's our audit terminology, but what you don't want to see on there is something that's categorized as a significant deficiency or material weakness. Those are the items where you know, you'd want to be working with management and making sure there's a good plan in place to address those quickly, because that means that there's a lack of internal controls where, you know, something significant could happen and not be prevented or identified in a timely fashion, whether that's an error or even fraud. These are along the lines of more insignificant items and best practice type items. I think it's great too that you see that there's items that we've noted in previous years that are, you know, addressed by management. They take them to heart and they implement changes that are recommended, and they work with us throughout the year as questions come up as well on the changes that they're making, where those are appropriate changes and will satisfy kind of our audit needs as well. And so that's great that they're staying on top of these things so they're not growing to larger items that could be significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in the future. So the good news there, definitely. And then other than that, we've just got some information here, nothing that we need to dive into too much. And I'm going to be passing along a slide that's got some other links and different things to information that we've been putting out there on everything related to COVID-19 and municipal utilities. This slide that we've got in here was from before we finished that as a firm, but this is links to some of our websites and different things that have different articles and other resources to help throughout these times. And so, but like I said, I've got one that's related specifically to municipal utilities that I'll pass along to Mike and to help out as you guys kind of navigate these challenging times and continue to do so. Other than that, just thanks to everyone that's involved in this process. It's not just the finance department that's participating in this. You know, we're talking to folks, especially during internal control procedures. We're talking to folks throughout the organization, whether it's from customer service and the billing side to engineering side of things and operations, IT. Everyone's been very helpful and transparent and open and honest along the way. And there were no limitations on the scope of the procedures that we performed. And thanks again to the board, President Bender, and management, executive management, for all the help along the way and for the policies that have been set and are continually followed by staff. You know, we felt very good overall with the results in terms of the internal control recommendations and the fact that you're not seeing things that are rising to a more significant level. And that tells you and gives you some information that, you know, you have good policies and procedures in place and leadership in place to make sure those items are being followed on a consistent basis. And you can get to this point where you have a clean audit report. So with that, I want to just open it up to any questions that the board might have as well for us.
Great, thank you, Keith. Thank you, Lucy, very much. I'd like to open up this action item to public comment. I am not seeing anything in the Q&A. And Shauna, do you have any other public comment on your end?
There is no public comment submitted, sir.
Great, thank you. Bob, do you have any thoughts? Super clean audit here, so thank you.
No, very, very impressed. I'm glad to see they got a clean bill of health. I mean, that's fantastic. It's nice to see that our debt is down one more year, and we're moving forward. And hopefully we'll move through this COVID-19 thing and get it behind us. So thank you very much. And my hat's off to the accounting department and all the departments that worked on this. Very good job.
Thanks, Bob. Krista, do you have any comments, concerns?
I don't have any concerns. I'm happy, although not at all surprised, to hear that we have a clean audit and that we were cheerful and cooperative and transparent, and that our issues from last year have been addressed, and we're just getting better and better. So thank you. Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you, Krista. Tony.
Just ditto for what Krista and Bob said. I know this is always an arduous annual effort, and it takes a lot of time beyond what staff already has on their plates. So I appreciate all the hard work, and it pays off, and the good news we get every year during this time. So thanks everyone involved.
Thank you, Tony. Mike Salmon, you're coming on board at a super clean audit. Thank you, Lucy. So we've had this for years. So so really appreciate all the hard work from the team, and it shows in this audit, and really appreciate it. So with that, I'm way at the end of the audit report, is to try and find the recommended action. Oh, there it is.
If I may, President Bender, I have the recommendation on the screen here to accept the auditor's report and accompanying audited financial statements for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2019, authorizing the district to release the report and the accompanying financial statements.
Great, thank you, Mike. Well said. Is there a motion?
I'll move staff's recommendation.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Shauna, could we have roll call, please?
Absolutely. Director Ellis,
Yes.
Director Laliotis,
Yes.
Vice President Fenn,
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Yes.
Keith and Lucy.
The audit.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you,
Take
Lucy.
care. All right. You guys have a good night.
Thanks. Have a great night.
Okay. Okay, we have a workshop item tonight, number 10, consideration to approve the Truckee Downer PUD's 2019 Water Quality Consumer Confidence Report. I'm going to say that's Brian, because I'm trying to get to the, hey, there it is, Brian.
Okay, good evening, President Bender, again, and members of the board. Workshop item this evening, number 10, review of the Consumer Confidence Report for 2019. Each year, staff presents to the board on this item, and I'll provide a little bit of background and history, a brief background. As you may recall, as we've discussed before, in 1996, the amendment to the Safe Drinking Water Act required public water systems to deliver to its customers an annual consumer confidence report, affectionately referred to as the CCR. The annual CCR is to include the following information: some details on the water source sampling, a list of the detected contaminants, basically a brief description of each of those contaminants for each of the sources, and any associated health risks with those contaminants. And then finally, an overview of where the water system performs in compliance with regulatory agencies. Each year, the district provides two reports, one for the Truckee main system and one for the Hirschdale system. The reason for this is the district maintains two operating permits with the State Water Resources Control Board, one for each of these systems, so an individual report is required of each. The State Water Resources Control Board requires this report to be published each year no later than July 1st. As you may recall, in 2012, the State Board included a provision that allows water systems to provide customers with access to this report via a website. It requires a one-click access on the water purveyor's website. I would like to note this, since 2012, we mentioned it in previous presentations, but it has saved the district significant funds in terms of reduction in costs for mailing out hard copies, printing them out, and things of that nature. The 2019 Consumer Confidence Report have been prepared for both systems and reviewed and approved by the State Water Resources Control Board. This district does have a system engineer with the state board that reviews those and, for lack of a better term, gives the blessings to produce those for the consumers. This year, for 2019, there were no reportable violations over the maximum contaminant level, often referred to as the MCL, for any of the contaminants identified by state and federal regulatory agencies. The customers, water system customers, will be notified in their June monthly water bills that this report is now available through one-click access on the district website, and staff will provide printed copies here at the district office upon request. The cost associated with the preparation and distribution of the 2019 CCR was included in the board-approved fiscal year 20 water operations budget. I would like to mention that each of the reports were included with the staff report for you this evening, and staff recommendation is review the district's Truckee Main System and Hirschdale System 2019 Water Quality Consumer Confidence Report and provide feedback to staff for public distribution. And I can answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you, Brian. I'd like to open this workshop to public comment. I'm not seeing any in the Q&A section, and then of course we'll check in with Shauna.
No, Mr. President, I do not have any public comment.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Krista.
Just that as President Bender likes the meatloaf graph, I do really like the water quality report. It's, I don't know, I get a kick out of reading it and seeing exactly how great our water is, and how, you know, how lucky we are and how much care we have to take of our system to you know, continue. So thank you very much for presenting this in such a clear and enjoyable ways. The pictures are really great this year. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Krista. Bob. You're still muted.
Yeah, I thought it was a very good report. Glad to see our water quality is still up there, and keep up the good work. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob. Tony.
No, just echo what Krista said. Another benefit of living in Truckee. Excellent water quality. Thanks to staff and everyone who's involved in keeping all that moving forward and producing this document. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. We got clean water, Brian. So loving it. So make sure you drink half of your weight in ounces a day. Just keep these healthy. So yeah, no other comments other than great job. Keep up the good work, and we are lucky. We've got really, really good water. So with that, we don't have any other questions, so we're good to go.
Thank you very much, board.
Thanks, Brian. Okay. So that was our one workshop item tonight. We have a closed session item number 11. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, General Manager's Performance Plan Review. And so we'll be diving into that, and everyone will leave this meeting, and then we'll jump into that closed session. So, and then I'm going to take a moment to refill my water before I dive in. So we'll
If we
see
could-
everyone
if
on
we
the
could
other
have a
side.
little 5-minute break, that'd be great.
Yeah, let's do that. 5 minutes at 19:10.
Signing off.
Thank you.